Our boys are really little, and I'm afraid that they're not going to remember much. So I wanted them to have a story that they can look back at for years to come. And I also, I wanted to show other people what foster care and adoption could look like. I think when I was younger, it meant like saving a kid from some horrible existence or something.
It's taking on a kid forever, until you're gonna raise them and provide for them until they're 18 at least, and part of your family, whether you had them biologically or not.
I wanted to be a mom my whole life. Other kids knew that they wanted to be a teacher or an astronaut. I knew that I wanted to be a mom. Being a mom is having people depend on you and always being able to be there for them and raising them, to trust God, number one, and to be good to other people. My mom's awesome. and she just loved being a mom, and I saw that and I wanted that for myself. We'd only been dating for a little bit, and I said, do you want to have kids? Because it's really important to me. And you were like, I don't know. And you were playing it off as like this cool guy thing. And I remember going to the bathroom and I was like, well, I don't know if this is gonna work out.
It about broke us up at first, probably, that subject. I was just very neutral on it. I could go one way or the other. Yeah, it'd be great to have kids, but on the other hand, I didn't have this deep desire that I really wanted my own children and needed my own children. And at one thought I was like, oh, it'd be great to have kids and have a bunch of me, running around. As much as Meredith wanted to have children, then I wanted to give that to her.
Well, I think a couple years into our marriage, Matt finally said, okay, we can start trying to have kids. So, we tried, and it was month after month of not getting pregnant, and then people around us started getting pregnant very quickly. It's torturous because you think that you might be, and then you're not, and then you think, well, what's wrong with me? And I know the date actually that we figured out something needed to change. It was the day that one of my good friend's daughter was born, because I thought I was pregnant. And I came home and found out that I wasn't. And it was one of my best friends, having her first baby, and I just lost it because I couldn't feel any joy for her. And Matt came home and found me collapsed on the floor, cuddling our dog and just sobbing.
She was just devastated because it wasn't happening. So it was frustrating. It was such a burning desire for Meredith, so it was a lot more emotional for her not being able to get pregnant and knowing that it would be her child.
Then we looked into adoption, both domestic and international. I liked that idea, but there was kind of a time constraint on that. It was going to be, 2 to 3 years before we'd have a kid in our house. And I wanted kids now. And Matt said, why don't we do foster care? And I had never even considered it. But he had a foster brother growing up. And it was actually a pretty hard experience, I think. And for him to still want to do that, I think spoke really highly of foster care.
That's when we started to look into adoption. Went to an informational meeting, I think, and found out more about adoption and within the state of Minnesota, but also international adoption. And come to find out, adopting a child is fairly expensive. I think at the time to adopt domestically or in the state of Minnesota was going to be anywhere from like $15,000 to $18,000, and then it would just go up from there as you went international. After we learned that, we thought, well, maybe there's other alternatives out there. Of course, foster parenting was another thing, but then, there's so many stereotypes behind fostering children. Having these strangers come into your home that you don't know, and what kind of baggage do they have, and how messed up are they, and are they going to burn my house down and do drugs on my kitchen table? Those were the scary thoughts I had about fostering for the first time. I thought it'd be a good alternative to having kids, and maybe there would be that rare chance at one point that we would be able to adopt a kid if everything worked out right. So we started that process, and then of course I had a job change and had the opportunity to basically get a job where I grew up in my hometown, Rapid City. Every state runs their fostering processes differently. So we had to start over and take classes here in the state of South Dakota in Rapid City. And you know, it's one of those things where they put your life under a microscope. And not only do you do training sessions 30 hours in a classroom, but they come into your home and interview you. And what was your life like growing up? And
What's your relationship like?
Well, yeah, you go through.
Who's good at what? Like, what are Matt's strengths? What are Meredith's strengths? What are your weaknesses? They said that I would have a hard time letting the kids go. They were right.
Well, you know, you get attached to children very quick, and the day they have to leave, they have to leave.
Yeah.
And you have no say in it, so that is probably the hardest part about being a foster parent. My particular situation is pretty messy. I had parents that were divorced when I was really young. You know, they dove right into my family history right away, and it was deep, and it gets emotional. I mean, they're asking you emotional questions and want to know how you were brought up and if you're going to be capable of handling, you know, the kids that are coming into your home. And they do home inspection. They actually come in and look in every room and check the water temperature. It makes sure your hot water is not too hot.
Sure, you have all your outlet covered. You got every outlet covered.
Every chemical in the house has to be basically locked up, and if it isn't, you have to put the little cabinet locks on all your cabinets. So they're going through quite an extensive evaluation, both in the home and on you, to make sure you're qualified to do it, which is a good thing. You're going through these classroom sessions, and they're trying to tell you all the things you'll encounter, so you get to see firsthand all the stereotypes that everybody thinks, and they're trying to prepare you for the worst kids, even though you won't necessarily have a lot of that, but they're trying to prepare you. A lot of times, you know, people like to make generalized statements or blanket statements about kids that you might get in foster care or what you might encounter, but when it comes down to it, it's like every kid and every case is so different.
And the goal for kids in foster care is to put them back with their family. That's plan A, and only when plan A fails is when you look to adoption or kinship, placements, things like that. We support the goal. We want kids to be with their families, and yeah, you get attached, and that's good. You want kids to attach to you. I don't think that's a reason to not do foster care, because you're gonna get hurt.
It's very difficult, you know. It's hard to be able to give the kids back, and it can be a very rewarding thing.
Yeah, I think it's easier than a lot of people think.
The majority of these kids, they're such great kids, and all they need is good guidance and love.
Consistency.
Yeah, structured consistency in a home. They just need their basic needs and the love that you can provide in a household.
So we were living in Minneapolis at the time, and we got all of our paperwork in, went to all the informational meetings, just had signed up for classes, got approved for everything where they start the process. So everything takes quite a while in Minneapolis. And then Matt gets a job in Rapid City. So we had to move, and we moved in with his mom. You know, we were living in somebody else's house, and so we didn't really pursue foster care then. And they came back from a trip, and they had been discussing us, I guess, and they said, hey, if you guys want to fill the house up with kids, go ahead. And so we said, okay. And within 2 days, somebody was in our house giving us information. And so I think within like 6 months, we had kids in our house.
And so we said, okay, well, we only want kids from the ages of 0 to 10, and they were fine with that.
But we at first said we'd only like 2. And then we got a phone call that was like, hey, do you want to take the sibling group of 4 kids? And I was like, what? We said we only wanted 2, which isn't, you know, it's not about me. And I call Matt and I'm like, what do you think about this? They have 4 siblings, like, should we just take 2? And he goes, well, I don't want to split up a sibling group. So we got 4 kids for our first placement, but they were awesome.
Right.
They were great kids. So we got Dominic and Tristan in July of 2014, and they came into care because Dominic was found wandering a highway by himself, and he was 2.5. And so they were actually placed into a foster home for a couple weeks with another family where it was determined that that family said, you know what, they need somebody that's going to stay at home with them full time. So the mom was going to go back to work when school started, so she said, nope, they need to be with the full-time stay-at-home mom. So that's when we got the phone call that we had these 2 little boys and they didn't know much about the older one. He was nonverbal. The foster mom dropped them off, and I remember the first time I saw them, you weren't here, were you? You were at work. My mom was here.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Yeah, my mom was here, and I remember seeing Tristan looking out of his car seat, just kind of looking around. The foster mom picked up Dom out of the car, and she turned him, and he looked at me, and he just opened his arms and like jumped into my arms, and it felt so great. So my mom was here when the boys were placed with us, and I remember being really overwhelmed because Dom couldn't communicate, and Tristan was, a 15-month baby. He was a good kid, but he would like scream all night. Of course he would, we were strangers. And I was just feeling the new parent overwhelmed feeling, and my mom looked at me and said, if you think that you can't handle them, you need to give them back right now. And my, just like this protective mama bear welled up in me and was like, of course I can handle it. No, they're staying. I'm not gonna let them leave. And I knew right then that like I was committed to them. That was in July, and they didn't terminate parental rights until March. And that was the first time that our social worker used the A word with me. She was very careful not to use it before that because she knew it would give me hope that wasn't warranted at that point. At that point, she said, okay, now we're gonna look at all the other family members and see if any of them are interested. And are you interested in adopting them? Possibly, if none of those family members work out. I said, well, yeah, of course. Of course we are. So it took months and months and months and months. A whole year. It took 1 year for them to rule out any other family that was interested. So it came down to us and another family of theirs that were interested. South Dakota is a family preference state. So that means that if there are any next of kin that are suitable, then the kids will most likely go with them. So it looked like our chances were pretty slim. The family backed out in March. And so it was a long transition from foster care to adoption with a whole year of us just hoping and praying that they could stay. Not even for me, because yes, I wanted to be a mom so badly, and I was. And even then, even before we knew we were able to adopt them, I felt very fulfilled as a mother. Even if we wouldn't have been able to keep them, I still would have felt fulfilled. And it was about them. I felt like if they were gonna leave, it would be really horrible for them to leave because Dom didn't attach to anybody before me. And Tristan at that point knew nobody but us as his parents. It would have been terribly traumatic for them to have to go live with people, even if they were relatives. So I was really worried about them for a whole year. It was a long year.
They're 2 very different people, I feel like. Tristan is just this like happy-go-lucky kid. As much as he'd been through or the things that he'd been through as far as neglect or being put into the foster care system, he was a little more bulletproof. Like he could deal with things a lot easier. He had this personality that everybody liked, and like he knew how to deal with people, and he was just like this little charmer from the beginning, which he still is today.
He was difficult because he didn't like me very much because he was used to a male taking care of him most of the time. So I couldn't comfort him, and that was really hard. You have night terrors and you can't do anything about those, and I wasn't a comfort to him until I just kept putting him in the front pack, and we would just go for walks in the grocery store or whatever. He would just be right here, and we finally bonded. He would walk up to a stranger and let him pick him up. Any man that had a hat on, Tristan would just walk up and let him pick him up.
He was so used to having his biological father watch over him and take care of him. That's basically all he knew. And then for Meredith to come in and be this motherly figure, he didn't know what to do and didn't really bond with Meredith for quite a while.
But it was less than a week after they came. Matt came home from work, and Tristan looks down the hallway and goes, "Dada?"
Yeah.
And he saw you. It wasn't like he thought his dad was coming. He saw you and said, "Dada," and we were like, "What?" Okay, and we just rolled with it. So they started calling you Dada, and Dom called me Bob. He would walk around the house going, Bob,
Yeah.
Bob.
Trying to say mom.
Instead of mom, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, because they only had a handful of words each when they came. Like, uh-oh, no, mama, dada, and then peekaboo, which sounded like, gotta go.
Yeah.
But it was peekaboo. They spoke their own little language together.
Dominic is just such a different kid than Tristan in the fact that you can tell that he had to just fend for himself a lot more. He would go scrounging for food, and we'd find him running down the gravel road, wandering around, because that's what he was used to doing. So that was interesting. And then, of course, him not being able to talk, he just could not hardly say any words and couldn't communicate what he wanted and what he needed. We basically learned that he'd never really talked to anybody or been spoken to or learned how to talk from anyone. And so that was just really hard. Probably the good 6 months before he really started learning how to talk.
Even though he was behind verbally, he was ahead in other ways. Like, he knew his alphabet by the time he was 3. Like, he could correctly recognize all the letters. Dom was really protective of Tristan. He would share his food with him and only him. And we would find Dom outside looking for food. Sorry. And he would go and like drink water off the ground. And he would take food and put it up to his mouth like this and hold it there and smell it and like touch it to his lip to make sure that it was okay before he'd eat it. He would see us preparing food and he would scream until he got some. And he wasn't malnourished because he was like 50 pounds as a 2-year-old, but he just didn't have access to good food all the time.
They would watch you preparing it and see it and just, they wanted it right now.
Yeah.
Like, because they were so used to probably just any food that was around, you had to eat it right now. And so to cook a meal in front of them was like crazy. Like, they didn't know what to do with that. So they would just sit there and scream. And that went on for at least a few weeks until they realized that, oh, over time you cook the food and then you eat it.
They trusted us eventually that we were going to feed them. As soon as Dom started talking and having like some more vocabulary, we found out that one of his biggest worries was that mommy would go. Anytime any character in a book was sad, it would be because his mommy left. He was really worried. We could deal with that. I'm not going to go anywhere.
That was one reason I think Dominic was maybe placed into our home, is because Meredith didn't work. You know, he needed a home where there was going to be somebody around all the time. You weren't just going to put him in daycare. He needed to form that attachment and build a relationship where he get attached to someone.
Yeah, and there were developmental things that he didn't get. Like, he didn't get skin to skin when he was younger because after a while we found out he needed it, and he would put his hands on me. For months I had to lay with him to put him to sleep, and he would put his hands on my, on my skin. And that's just something that he needed because he didn't get it when he was a baby. It was amazing how quickly Dom and Tristan got attached to us and started to really thrive. Like 2 weeks after we got them, we took a 10-day road trip to Oregon. We didn't know who they were, they didn't know who we were, but we went to bed together, we woke up together, and we traveled all day together. I think that was huge in their attachment to us. Like, oh, they're not going to be gone when I wake up. Do you want to be Dominic Pfister?
Yeah.
Christy called and said that we get to change your name to Dominic Pfister and Tristan Pfister. What do you think about that? Yeah! Yay! Pfister boys! Woo! No. What do you want to be? You want to be Dom Pfister?
Oh. Yeah, thank you, buddy. Oh, I love you.
You get it?
I don't believe it. Is it true? Yay! Are you gonna be, I'm gonna be your daddy, buddy? Good.
No.
It's set in stone? Oh, Dom, I love you so much.
come to order. This is the time and place set in matter of the adoption of Kason Mendoza and Tristan Mendoza. This is Butte County Adoption File 16-2. Is Kason present?
Yes.
Tristan present? Yes. All right. Petitioners are Matthew and Meredith Pfister. Is it Pfister? All right.
Matt and I just want to extend our gratitude to everyone who's been involved, all of the workers who acted swiftly and with compassion, and really looked out for the best interest of our kids. You want to add something?
I was just going to say, just very impressed with all parties involved. We just been very impressed with the whole DSS, the court system, all the workers have been involved. It's just a lot of support from everybody. Thank you.
It is therefore ordered that the minor children be and are hereby are the adopted children of Matthew and Meredith Pfister and shall be regarded and treated in all respects forevermore as their children. It is further ordered that Kason Dom's name be changed to Dominic Matthew Pfister. It is further ordered that Tristan's name shall be changed to Tristan Isaac Pfister. This court further orders and directs that the birth certificate shall be issued and all execute whatever order shall have.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Congratulations.
We have 2 kids, like forever.
It was just a whirlwind.
Yeah.
It's like all these emotions.
Yeah.
Crying and
Yeah.
happy and
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's the best feeling ever.
yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
So happy we have so much support.
Yeah.
Friends and family. Thank
Yeah.
you all. This is
Mm.
awesome. Now
Yeah.
we get to go celebrate.
Yeah.